Hey guys, Rowdy here. So in this week's video, I've decided to talk about my favorite TV shows and movies. I decided for a while how I was gonna organize this because there's so many different TV shows and movies that I can appreciate. So what I did was I decided to break it down into five genres. The genres I chose are sci-fi, historical, comedy, cartoon, and horror. I mixed movies and TV shows together. I'm going to include timestamps of the different genres. So like if sci-fi just really doesn't interest you but horror does, you can skip ahead and find out what my favorite horror movies or TV shows was. But if you're interested in all of them, just stay tuned. I am going to start with sci-fi. Number 5, Independence Day. When I was a kid, I loved this movie. I don't know if you guys remember, but around the mid-90s, surround sound systems were really popular. In the beginning, any movie that had the THX to let you know that it was surround sound, my dad was one of those people that just liked to put in that movie and then turn it up, just for that one part. He would always quit playing right after that. He didn't watch the movie. He just watched that one part 1,000 times and probably watched the movie 3 times. But we had the movie, and I watched it all the time. I probably watched that movie 30 times. Number 4, the Matrix trilogy. I thought the concept of the Matrix trilogy was really good. I thought that was really cool, the idea, we could be living in a Matrix, and of course they made it into a story. And also, I thought that movie had a lot of really, really good scenes. One really cool thing about the Matrix, they had the ability to instantly download knowledge into their brains, and I just really can't wait for that to happen in real life. Gee, I really would like to learn something. All right. Number 3, Avatar. I found that movie really entertaining, really grabby. Without spoiling it, I guess I could say it was basically a futuristic Pocahontas scenario. I went to go see that movie for the first time. I was with my cousin, and we were actually going to go see Wolfman. We had no idea Avatar was even a thing. But Wolfman wasn't playing. We saw that Avatar was, and we was like, well, we'll just check this out. We didn't know anything about it. My cousin, she's actually a little more macho than me when it comes to movies, and I don't cry or get scared at movies very often. We both got a little bit emotional, and that's actually saying a lot. After I watched it in theaters that first time, I went back 4 or 5 other times, I don't remember how many, and it was to take other people to the theater. I was like, man, you gotta see this movie, dude. It's the greatest movie ever. Number 2, Star Wars. I know a lot of people are probably going, how is that not number 1? Star Wars is one of the greatest things ever created. I think it's one of the best examples of a good versus evil story. It has everything a sci-fi person would be interested in. It takes place in space, people traveling from planet to planet. It's got a lot of robots, a lot of aliens. The story's so good. The story is fantastic. Wouldn't that be awesome to be a Jedi? 100% chance I would use the Force irresponsibly. Number 1, Star Trek. If I am being specific, it is Star Trek The Next Generation. I am definitely Picard over Kirk. Started watching Star Trek when I was about 6. I still watch it to this day. In fact, the amount of times that I've watched Star Trek, even if I just crazy underestimate it, it's embarrassing. I've watched it way too much. I watch TNG the most, followed by Voyager, followed by Deep Space Nine, followed by the original series. I'm actually currently rewatching the original series with my girlfriend. I love that we're going back and watching that. And I feel like I can appreciate the original series a lot more as an adult. Star Trek has definitely been with me my whole life. Whenever my girlfriend and I are talking about a dilemma or talking about a philosophical thing or just something like that, I always have a Star Trek reference for it. I'm pretty sure 100% of my values and ethics and morality come from Star Trek. And I'm okay with that. I think it's a good thing. Star Trek, possibly favorite show ever. So that's my top sci-fi. Okay, moving on to the next genre, historical. Before I begin, what I put on the list here is purely like entertainment, historical entertainment. Number 5, 300. I found that movie to be very entertaining. When I first watched 300, I really did not know anything about the Athenians or the Spartans or the Persians. It's a really good movie. It really portrays the struggle really well. In the movie, 300 people decided to go against a big army. And they had a pretty good strategy, and even in real life, it worked out really, really well. I just really like that movie. Number 4, Troy. What really gravitates me to like historical movies and things like that is when I feel like it was accurately portrayed. Like, this is what the people wore, this is how the people talked, this is the events that took place. And although we didn't really know much about the Troy other than like the epics we read about, I felt like it was portrayed really well. Like, what would happen if 50,000 Greeks wanted to go conquer the city? What would that look like? But anyway, I thought it was a really good movie. Number 3, Neil deGrasse Tyson's series Cosmos: A Space-Time Odyssey. I consider this historical, but if anything, it's more like scientific. But I consider it historical because it goes over the history of how things were learned. We got lights, we got airplanes, we got all this modern technology. But I think it's really, really interesting to look into like when did those ideas first develop. Very historical. A lot of names, a lot of dates, when things happen. I thought that was a really good series, and I thought that was really educational and also entertaining to watch. And if something is educational and entertaining, that's just a win-win. Number 2, Gladiator. The Roman times are one of my favorite like historical times, and I felt like Gladiator was like a really good portrayal of that. The movie just had like a lot of really, really good scenes. It had a really, really good story to it. I like anything gladiator like related. I want to be a legless gladiator. But anyway, that was a really good movie. I liked it. Number 1, Spartacus. Spartacus the series. I have not seen any of the Spartacus movies, but I was aware of the story of Spartacus before I watched the series. I just thought they really did a good job with that show. And of course, the Spartacus story itself is really, really good. I felt like the show was much better with the original guy. However, when they replaced him, I really believed that they did the best they could have possibly done. And the show went on to be the best it could be. It was an amazing series. I really feel like they captured the essence of what Rome might have actually been like at that time, really well. Sure, the dialogue might not have been exactly the same, and there might have been some other things, but I feel like it was a very, very close representation. Next genre, comedy. I have a very, very strong appreciation for comedy. Number 5, Trailer Park Boys. I had refused to watch this show for the longest time. One of my best friends just kept saying, dude, you gotta watch this show, it's so funny. I gave it a chance one day, and I just started watching it, and then I started watching it more. I realized, the style of comedy, just really funny, super funny. Number 4, Scrubs. I watched it all the time. When it was popular and when it was out. It's just a really, really funny show. It had a lot of wacky humor in it. It also had an element of feel good to it that I really liked, and that's always nice. Number 3, Dragon Ball Z Abridged. This one is out of place for 2 reasons. One, it is a cartoon, and we are not talking about cartoons. And 2, it is a YouTube series. It is a fan-based parody series. But I had to include it and at least give it the number 3 spot because being a big Dragon Ball Z fan myself, it was the funniest thing I'd ever seen in my life. If you are a Dragon Ball Z fan, I strongly urge you to check it out. Number 2, The Office. The Office series was incredibly funny to me. It just had really good characters. It somehow blended wacky, just over the top characters with real life very well, I thought. It's just a really good show. Number 1, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I binge watched the crap out of this show. This style of comedy is right down my alley. I love this show. It's the greatest show ever. Alright, next genre, horror. I like really, really good scary movies. One real quick story before I begin. I do remember my very first scary movie. I acted so irrationally, unlike me. I was about 3 years old, and the movie was Chucky. And I'm not particularly scared of like dolls or anything like that, but for whatever reason, this movie had me running behind the door, between the door and the wall, and I was just like hiding there. And then I'd come out and watch some of the movie, and then I'd run back. That movie did not make the list, because I don't remember anything about it. But I do remember that story. So, you know, there you go. Number 5, The Skeleton Key. This movie, I thought, just had an amazing like story and an amazing twist to it. I really remember those particular elements. Like, that movie stuck with me. I don't know if I can say much beyond that without spoiling it. Number 4, Saw. I'm actually not even sure how many Saws were made. I'm only talking about the first one. I thought that movie had really, really good suspense elements. I thought it had really good, like, you know, psyche elements too. It had its jumpy moments. It had like really good story elements. Like all the things that just make a good scary movie. Number 3, The Cube. That movie was really good. It was a pretty old movie by the time I got around to watching it. But I watched The Cube, Cube Zero, and Hypercube. Kind of the same deal as Saw as far as like getting out of puzzle and suspense. Like those two things go very well together, I think. So I very much enjoyed like all of those movies. The Cube being by far my favorite. Very, very good movie in my opinion. Number 2, Signs. This movie, a lot of people might argue, falls more in like the sci-fi more than like the horror or scary. But if anybody has actually seen this movie, you probably know why I included it. It's actually only one particular scene that's just like unforgettable. I know you know which scene I'm talking about. I mean, it has a lot of like suspenseful and scary scenes in it. Watch it. Like, tell me what you think, what genre it should fall under if you haven't seen it. Number 1, 1408. This movie is, you know, ghost haunting type movie, which I'm usually not like that big into. This movie I thought was extremely creative and just like an overall like really, really good story. By far like the best example of a haunting that I've ever seen. That concludes the list of 4. Next genre, cartoons. There's a lot of different cartoons that I like, but I decided to just keep it simple and top 5 overall cartoons. Comical, serious, entertaining, whatever. Just favorite cartoons. Number 5, Archer. I really do like the style of comedy in this show, and the dialogue is really good. I find the show to be very like entertaining. My style of comedy. Number 4, South Park. I really like South Park's style of comedy. I have not seen South Park in quite some time, so a lot of the South Park that I'm referring to is a lot of the older seasons. I watched it a lot growing up, you know, teenage years and, you know, whatever. It was just like the funniest show ever. I'd always look forward to watching it. Number 3, SWAT Cats. This show probably has like a very, very small cult audience. I'm not sure. It was about a mega city and 2 vigilantes that fight crime or whatever. But in the show, everybody's cats. I really loved that show as a kid. And that show made the list, not just because it's so good, but a lot of nostalgic reasons, if I'm being honest. But it is a really good show. Number 2, Futurama. This show definitely has a lot of my style of comedy in it, for sure. But it also has a lot of sci-fi elements. I'm basically one of those guys that liked Futurama more than The Simpsons. Futurama just had like all my favorite things in it. You could also tell that the creators were huge Star Trek fans like me. So a really funny show, really well animated, overall good show. Number 1, Dragon Ball Z. Dragon Ball Z gets the number 1 spot. It is my favorite cartoon. Ever. Anybody out there that watched Dragon Ball Z, I don't care who you are, I know if you were ever a Dragon Ball Z fan, at one time or another, you powered up in the mirror. And you knew when you were doing it that if anyone ever saw you, they would think you were crazy. But Dragon Ball Z has a very, very good story to it. Frieza Saga was definitely my favorite saga, followed by Cell, followed by Saiyan, followed by Majin Buu, and also was a huge fan of the Dragon Ball series. Definitely one of my favorite shows, and definitely my favorite cartoon. Really, really good story, very good animation, really, really great show. Well, that's going to wrap it up for my top 5 lists and my top 5 genres. It was tough coming up with top 5 lists, but I I'm satisfied with the things that I chose. I want to hear what you guys' favorite TV shows or movies are. And maybe we have some things in common there. I also want to see if like somebody names something and I go, dang, that's such a good movie. I probably should have put that on the list. Because I'm almost certain that'll happen. But yeah, let me know what you guys' favorite movie or TV show is in the comments below. But anyway, that's going to do it for this video. I'll catch you guys next time.